Normally, the data shows that about 60% of the reported hate crimes in the country are African Americans, and African Americans are only 12.5% of the population. It raises major concerns. I've heard people tie it to just the experiences of African Americans in this country that take us back to slavery. And then, of course, the teachings or the edifications that were utilized to separate African Americans out from other Americans in our country. But as we look at that data, we see that it's not limited to us. And sadly and unfortunately, we share some of that burden and challenge with our friends from the Arab communities or those who appear Southeast Asians. We often say that bigots are not the brightest people. And as much as they try to target Muslim Americans in our country that may or may not be of Arab descent, those numbers are growing at faster rates. But you're absolutely right. The #1 victims of hate crimes in the United States, as reported to the Department of Justice, are African Americans.
Why is it so difficult to get an incident classified as a hate crime?
You know, it isn't always, but unfortunately, it depends on really the discretion of law enforcement officials. Hate crimes are when there's a hate manifest to the commission of a crime that we normally collect data on anyway. For instance, whether it's murder or rape or robbery or arson or other crimes that we collect every year as part of the uniform crime reportings. If we can show there's a manifest, the reason that this house was burned is because an interracial couple lived inside of it, or the reason that this person was killed and hung from a tree is because of the color of their skin, because they're African Americans, then we clearly establish that it was indeed a hate crime driven by that very reason, that hatred, because of who someone is, and not because of some particular incident or other things that have happened in our society. So it's still a challenge.
The Department of Justice isn't even fully staffed yet. We saw the departure of dozens of U.S. attorneys. Where do you see this progressing? Are you more concerned than ever about hate crimes slipping through the cracks in the United States?
Well, on a number of levels, the short answer is yes. If we look at the Department of Justice, the real question now is, with an Attorney General like Jeff Sessions, who will be the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights? That's a department that has an awful lot of discretion in leading and addressing concerns of hate crimes in our country. That's a huge deal. Who will be in charge of investigating these issues and concerns? There's also a concern that even coming from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and the President of the United States desk, that the things he's saying are sometimes at the very least loose and are saying it in a way that does not recognize that there are those listening for that dog whistle, as they say. All data, whether we're looking at the Department of Justice or the Southern Poverty Law Center, says that the number of hate groups in our country have grown, and those that are members of some of the traditional groups have grown as well. Whether looking at the Klan, the neo-Nazi party, the sword, the shield, the arm of the Lord, or other extremist groups, we know those numbers have increased, and we know the incidence of hate crimes have increased as well, not just for African Americans, but sadly to say, for many other Americans as well.
Hilary Shelton, thank you as always for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you.